Everyone, and welcome to the City of Virginia regularly scheduled Committee of the Whole meeting. I'll call this meeting to order. Today's date is Tuesday, October 20th, 2020. The time is 9 a.m. And just another reminder for those of you who are in the audience or those who are on the phone, they're going to be making a presentation. Please speak loud enough in your microphone so our city clerk, Pam, can take notes. We have on the line our city clerk, Pamela Bean, and Councilor Maya Beyondich. Pam, would you please, well, I guess we don't have to take the roll call, it's a committee of the whole meeting, but everybody's here. So we have a really aggressive agenda today, 12 items. So I'm going to turn this meeting over to our city administrator, Britt C. Bennis. Britt, and before we do so, I want to welcome everybody who's in the audience today. Greg French from the Department of Public Utilities, Bill Hofdahl from the Department of Public Utilities, Dave Tuttle from VITA and Citizen. We got Greg Gilness, Alcott Pardon for Committee Chairman and Citizen, and on the design team for the MEC, and our city attorney, Brian Lindsay. So go ahead, Britt. Thank you.
Thank you. First item on the
Oh,
agenda.
I'm sorry, and Matt Reed from SCH, sorry. Thank you.
Thank you. First item on the agenda is Greg French from General Manager of Virginia Public Utilities.
Good morning, Greg. If you want to turn that microphone on there to the green position. Push the button to green. Very good. Good morning, Greg. Thanks for coming.
You're welcome, Mr. Mayor. Thanks for having me.
Appreciate it. Okay, so the purpose of the meeting, bringing you here is to just give us an update on the Department of Public Utilities, primarily the power outages, and explain to the general public some of the challenges that we've had and the reasons for that.
Hey, Mr. Mayor, thank you.
Thank you, Greg.
We've had kind of a bad stream of events happening here, and I'll go back probably about 8 weeks ago. It started with a contractor dump truck that decided to leave Northside with the dump bucket up, tore some lines out of the sky. Second one was a contractor hit of the major feed into town, which is a 23 kV feed that comes from the structure over by, I still call it United Electric or Wesco, over on the Mountain Iron side of the bridge, comes across, comes down West Chestnut, crosses over, comes into our plant. Again, it's the main feed into town, 23 kV. All of our distribution is 13.8. That hit happened. I think it took our guys 4.5 hours to get back on our feet. I can look at all of you and say, in hindsight, thank goodness that the individual who hit it did not die. Thank goodness that our crews are knowledgeable enough to go out and make the fix and not get severely hurt. It was that bad. The spark actually went right around the piece of equipment that the operator was in. So with that being said, our crews came in, spliced 2 of the 3 lines that were hit. I should have actually brought you a piece of the line to show you the severity of the energy that blew out of that line. It's unbelievable. Sure. The severity of the hit was absolutely unbelievable. So our guys came in. I was out of state at the time and made the fix and got the 306, we'll call it. That's the main feed into town. So if you hear the 306, that's what I'm referring to as that line. Got it up and running, put the load back on it. It held the load. Everything visually looked fine. A short while thereafter, I think it was a week or 2 later, that line, we lost the line. So what happened was the Minnesota Power tie on the 306. They have a breaker on their side. We have one on our side, tripped. Sent the crews out, looked at everything. Everything looked good. Brought in some engineering, Saginaw Power. They used to be Siemens, or now Saginaw Power. They do all of our highly technical testing of this type of equipment. Came in, tested the breakers, looked at the relays, everything looked and tested fine. We said, well, it may not have been a result of that hit, even though in the back of your minds it's saying it is. And a short while thereafter, it was my birthday, so I remember it well, 4 in the afternoon on a Sunday, we got hit again on the same line. Nothing found, no squirrels on the ground, no geese. So at that point, me, Greg French, as the general manager, said, okay, it's time to start replacing stuff. Even though when we go through issues like this, we're working with technical experts from Saginaw Power. We're working very closely with Minnesota Power because it's the tie to them, and we're working with our staff. People are saying, well, it's not the line. My response is replace the line anyway because that's where it got hit. But the thing that people have to understand is the severity of that type of an energy that's released in that hit. I mean, it could have cracked insulator halfway down West Chestnut. You know, I mean, the amount of energy that instantaneously explodes more or less. So we're at a point right now where I've been into major communications with Minnesota Power, asking them to change their breaker setting to a 1-shot, 2-shot, or 3-shot, which people in town say, hey, you know what? My lights flickered 3 times yesterday. I had to reset all my clocks, this and that. My response is, well, that's because we have these relays that automatically reset 1 time, 2 time, 3 time. That's the 1-shot, 2-shot, 3-shot. So I'm working with them on taking a closer look, seeing if we can have reshots on that. The second time, again, it could have been a tree branch that slapped the line. I don't know if you've all noticed that we went and trimmed branches up West Chestnut and tried to clean that out. Again, right now, we've shed all the load that we could off of that, but we still want load on the 306 so that we can physically watch it until that 200 feet of line gets replaced. Terminations. Once the line is placed, the terminations are in, it's about $15,000 in testing of the new equipment that goes in. Again, I'll just end by saying a couple years ago, the Hibbing Public Utilities kind of had the same issue, and you know, the newspaper called me, and a few people called me and wanted to comment. At that time, I said, I refused to comment because with the distribution of electricity, it could be me tomorrow. So here I stand in front of you and the public saying, yeah, this is tomorrow. We're doing the best we can to remedy it. We've shed the load. On the last outage, we did shed the load to the Ridgewood feeder, which is another place that we can bring power in from Ridgewood into feeder number 1, which is the mall and the Miners Memorial area. We blew a fuse on that one, which blown fuses happen. And of course, it was boom, boom, boom. We had the 306 issues, and then we had that fuse go. Our guys came out. I think all of them except the first one were under 2-hour outages, which, you know, is something that we take pride in getting the power back on as quick as we can. But again, we're doing what we can to remedy it. Yes, our phones have been ringing off the hook. Yes, we try to, you know, work with people, let them know what's going on. Since the issues have come up, the commission came to me and wants the social media site completed. I've told them we will be up and running on Facebook by December 1st. Right now, I mean, it's nothing to set the site up, but the issue that we're having is, you know, the internal policy and training. When you have 75 employees and people typically aren't very nice to a public utility, you know, that everybody's trained and we have our I's dotted and T's crossed as to potential discipline that may came out, even people using their private what do you call it, site or whatever to comment as a public employee. And again, just trying to figure out, you know, who's going to be assigned to keep that updated.
Well, thank you, Greg. One quick question, I think for all of us in the general public, as you work diligently to repair the 200 feet of line moving forward, what's your anticipated time frame in which to get that accomplished?
They're hoping to do it this week or next week.
Okay, and by doing so, once they start the process, it should take how many days or?
It'll take probably a day.
A day or so?
Yeah, because what we'll do is as the line's getting laid, we'll have Hunt Electric in there making the terminations. The terminations are too big for our people to do. Again, it's a high voltage line. And, you know, they'll do all their terminations, and then Saginaw Power will come in and do all of the retesting, including the testings on the transformer.
Yeah, thank you. And you know, as we all know, that tensions and emotions are running high. I mean, in this cycle of life with the election, with the power issues, with the COVID-19, and people are under a lot of pressure and tension and frustration moving forward, and a lot of that frustration is elevated as a result of that. I know that you're working hard on that. We know internally that these issues are being addressed, but for you to come here publicly and address this for the general public, for those listening at home, is very, very helpful. And I know that there's some additional advertising that you'll be putting out about the reasons for the power outage and those kind of things, so we appreciate that. So I'll move to any other councilor that may have a question or comment about that. Let's first go to Councilor Friedli, but then go to Councilor Bearable. Councilor Friedli.
Real quick, will there be an additional power outage during the reparations, or is there going to be like a bypass to keep everything up and running?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
council member, yes, there will not be any outages. What we do is we're able to shed the load off of that 306 line, that main feeder. It's not a perfect thing to do, because as the weather gets colder and electric demand goes up, you know, those feeders aren't sized to run the whole community, but the answer is no, there will not be a scheduled outage.
Thank you. Councilor Bearable?
Greg, you might want to mention one other thing that I reported on at my liaison meeting to the council, that you shed some of the load up to PNH up there also. Is that correct?
Mr. Mayor?
Mr. French?
Councilmember Baraboo? Yes. What we did, again, when we shed load, and I'm sorry I didn't get into real detail on that, the 306 is down, which is 306 comes into town, and a lot of load is distributed through town from there. We have a Midway substation that we had to put in because of the bridge. We couldn't bring power across the bridge. We have a Ridgewood substation. The Ridgewood substation used to also feed all the way up to Midway. So there's some room available to bring load onto that Ridgewood substation. And then when PNH was developed, you know, PNH was going to be huge. They were looking at 3.5 to 5 megawatts. So we put in I believe it's a 5 megawatt substation up there. They're only running about 1 megawatt. So there's a lot of extra load up there that we're able to bring back into town this way. So yes, we did use the PNH sub, the Ridgewood sub. The Alcott sub, the one by the hospital, runs pretty maxed out.
Okay, thank you for that, and I appreciate, Mr. French, you put an article explaining this in the paper, so I really appreciate that you did that, of what went on and happened. So, thank you.
And if I could, I believe that Britt, working with Britt, that she's attached it to the city website. And our website operator is on vacation, so we're going to attach it to ours this week when she's back.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Johnson?
Thank you for coming in today and having this conversation. And I also appreciate that you and the commission are working on future communication. I think that's one of the frustrations that I've heard the most, that people don't know what's going on. So I really appreciate that you all are working on that. Yeah, is there any concern about, because of the steam conversion, the electric use being higher or changing? Is there any of those concerns that need to be addressed during this 306 issue?
Mr. Mayor?
Mr. French?
Councilor? The answer is yes, we have plenty of electric feed available to run the electric system once the conversion is done, if a lot of customers are going to electric. However, there aren't very many that are. You know, that's why right now it's real important to get this 306 squared away and back online. And I think the key to it, and I mentioned it once before, is Minnesota Power's consideration, and they're strongly considering it, and they're having their engineers look at it and go into a 2-3 shot automatic reclosure on their breaker as well. So if a branch or a squirrel or something hits that line, it doesn't fault it out.
If, for clarification, if it has that 2 or 3 shot on that main feed, then the people who lost we would all see that flicker occasionally if something were to happen instead of just an automatic out. Is that what that means?
Mr. French?
Counselor, yes, and I explained that earlier. I don't know if you were in the
Yeah, I wasn't,
bathroom.
what I had done is put the camera so it was easier to focus on you, so yeah, I was
Okay,
listening.
again, that's when you hear people saying, hey, my lights flickered, I had to reset
Yes.
the microwave and the clocks and everything. That's typically what it is.
Okay.
It's that reclosure, a squirrel hits the line and it automatically recloses and recloses, and it sounds gory, but you hope eventually it just burns it off, and then, you know, it recloses without having to call people in from home, you know, and come in and reclose it manually.
Well, again, thank you, and, you know, if there's stuff we can do with our Facebook, or please let Britt know, and we'll definitely help support you in that.
Will do, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Counselor Paulson?
Thank you, Mayor. Excuse me. Thank you so much, Greg, for coming in. And I did receive a couple phone calls. One of the questions that I had, and I'm not knowledgeable on this, but if power goes out, you know, with most of the people that have done their steam conversions, some of the people are new to how gas works. And one of the questions that I received was, if the electricity goes out and the pilot light goes out, does that happen when the electricity does go out? And how can someone best prepare if their pilot light goes out?
Mr. Mayor?
Mr. French?
Counselor, the pilot light should not go out with a loss of power. You know, with a loss of gas, it you know, would if we have a gas break and we have to shut the gas down, because that pilot light runs directly off of the gas feed. So that should not be an issue.
And then I really,
Mr. Hofstall, if you please come forward, and we have a live feed here, so we'd like to everybody be able to hear what you have to say. Thank you. Mr. Hofstall.
I just felt it important to say that most of the newer boilers are electronically ignited. So they don't have pilots that stay on. They are electronic ignition. So that means that when the power is out, that they don't ignite.
that they're safe. And is that something that you guys could maybe address maybe on your website, just for new people that are new to the gas conversion and things to look out for, or is that not something you would do?
Mr. Mayor?
Mr. French?
Counselor, thank you. We're always looking for newsletter articles, and I think that would be something good, is work with one of the furnace people and maybe put some information in there about their new furnace. However, I know the people that install the furnace, typically, you know, you have to bring them in, you know, for follow-up warranty work and things like that. You know, they do kind of instruct, but point well taken for a potential newsletter article.
Perfect, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councilor Paulson. Councilor Bearable.
Yeah, I happen to have in my household both sets of systems, one with a pilot that goes constantly on my fireplace, and I've had it for 15 years and never shut it off. And that's the best way. Leave them run, don't shut them off, because they build stuff up, and that's the thing around where the gas comes out, and it's like a like if you take a faucet and put junk on it, you got to clean that every once in a while if you shut them off. But I also have an electronic gas hot water heater, and once the power goes out, I never have to go down and reset it. It starts itself up again once the electricity comes on. So just so it's safe. I've never had trouble with them.
Thank you. Mr. French?
Yeah, the only thing, Mr. Mayor, thank you, that I want to add is a lot of times, though, the furnace won't work when the power's out, even though the pilot stays on, you know, because some of them are driven by an electric pump and things like that. So there would be repercussions to the power being out. However, it wouldn't be a pilot issue, in my opinion.
Thank you, I really appreciate that.
Okay, thank you. And I have the privilege of having both gas, electric, and wood in the event the power does go out this winter. So I appreciate you coming in, Greg and Bill. I know that there's been a lot of questions about that. I think this clarifies a lot of things. It appears as though, you know, the power just, you know, wasn't caused by not having due diligence. They weren't caused by, you know, the Department of Public Utilities and our employees, caused by contractors and feeds coming in that we had no control over. So I think that has to be, clarified. And of course, moving into your emergency operations plan, how you respond to emergencies by bringing power from other sources. I think that's helpful for us to know that and for the public to know that, because we do have a plan in place in which to do this. It's just not the power goes out and then everybody scrambles. There is a plan that you follow and try to restore the power as quickly as possible. And so we appreciate you coming in today. Anybody else have any questions for Mr. French or Mr. Hofdahl? Councilor Barnzelli.
Thank you, Mayor. Greg and Mr. Hofdahl, I hope they're watching this live at home, because a lot of calls wondering why is this happening, 2 or 3 times last week or 2 weeks ago. So I'm hoping that the way you explained it, it should be clear for them to understand what and why that it's happening. So.
Mayor?
Yes, Mr. French.
Counselor, thank you. And one note that I'd like people to understand is they can go on social media and think that we don't see the comments that are out there. And there are some comments, and we do take an eye to it, per se, on social media. But believe me, we get just as frustrated when the power goes out as the people who are trying to turn a switch on or be on the computer to keep up with the life the way they live it. So,
Thank you.
Before we let you go, I'll just ask Councilor Beyondich. Councilor Beyondich, do you have any questions for Mr. French or Mr. Hofdahl regarding this public utilities issue?
No, I'm glad it was explained, and it's nice that when people call, we can try to explain to them what is happening.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Councilor Beyondich. Anybody else before? Councilor Paulson.
Thank you. Is there a way, Mr. French, that if and when this happens, that it could be communicated to the city in the interim between the time that you guys do get your Facebook page up, so that we could do that posting on behalf, or our administration could kind of facilitate that if need be, if you need to have some communication?
Mayor?
Mr. French?
Counselor, I do communicate with administration here. In fact, there was a time or two where the administrator texted me before I knew there was an outage myself. So we do communicate. And again, one more thing I should add is through the years, and called stoic or what you may, the calls come in and they typically get routed to our power plant, which is 24/7 operated, and the staff in there typically lets them know what's going on. But in these outages we've had, the plant has come down with the feeder going down. Therefore, that access hasn't been available. The one time I got a little bit upset with myself that I didn't make the call, not putting 2 and 2 together that the plant was down. So people were calling and getting rather frustrated because they were just going to an answering service. But again, in that situation, I could have called in staff to come, answer the phones, but I didn't put 2 and 2 together. The plant was down. So that caused an awful lot of stir too, because people in the community are used to calling and actually talking to somebody, finding out what's happening.
Thank you. Thank you, Greg. And just for this, we have a mechanism in place within the city of Virginia where if there's an emergency that occurs, particularly with public works, public safety, the fire EMS, police department, public works, if there's something that that the council and the mayor need to know, if it's an emergency call out or whatever the case may be, a fire, a shooting, or whatever the case may be, that's the department head or the on-scene commander is to notify the city administrator, who then will send out a blanket email to all the councilors and ourselves, just to give us an update of what happened. There's no specifics about it, so when we get a call, we'll know. We can tell the caller that the police is responding to this, the fire is responding to that, Public Works respond to this, and maybe some way for us to collaborate on a communication mechanism so that when there's a power that goes out, there's an outage, it can be communicated to one person, maybe our city administrator or whoever, and then that can be disseminated to all of us. So when we get these telephone calls, we're able to say, well, the Department of Public Utilities has notified us of a power outage, and they're working on it. We don't know specifically what it is, but, they're working diligently to get it done. So that might save you calls as well to the Department of Public Utilities. So I think that's where we're asking maybe to take a look at that, if you would. Thank you. Councilor Johnson.
Mayor, and that was going to be my question, and Britt alluded to when I met with her after being gone, that you are establishing a different calling tree so that when stuff happens within the utilities, you get to know, and then we get to know. So I think that would go a long way too, because as the city, Parks and Rec, the fire department, police department, and the city all have those Facebook pages that are we have lots of followers, and so to help build your page, that would be key to, and then until you have yours up, to notify us. Britt can get it put on Facebook within 30 seconds, or depending on what time of day or night it is, and then we all know. So I appreciate that you're working on that internal protocol as well to make sure that when those phone calls get to the power plant, they're not stopping there, especially on these major outages, that they're going to someone that can do something and at least inform the public that we're aware and we're doing our best we can. So I appreciate that very much. Thank you.
Mr. French, any last comments?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. The one thing that I'd like to address on that comment directly is the public needs to be aware that every time the power goes out, every time the steam goes out, every time there's a gas hit, we do everything as diligently as humanly possible to do it. I see comments, I hear comments, there's not even a storm, there's no snowstorm, there's no high winds, how do we lose power? Well, to me, a contractor hit is way more catastrophic than what we deal with in a typical storm. And I'll say typical, not a FEMA storm. Because, again, there's lives at risk and there's major damage done to critical infrastructure.
Thank you, Greg. Very good. Appreciate it, Mr. French. Mr. Hofdahl, thank you. Councilor Baraboo.
Yeah, just one other kudos to our city administrator. Some of us don't have Facebook and other things, but she does text us on these outages also, besides going on line with the computer. So this has been a benefit when she does that. She does dual things from whatever you tell her. She sends it out on text messages also.
Yeah, thank you. Anything else from anybody? Mr. French? Mr. Hofdahl, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Britt?
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is the review of the Mesabi Humane Society contract for 2021 through 2023.
Yeah, I took a look at this contract. We'll look for comments from the council here as you're looking through the contract, but I read through it's typical for, I don't see any significant changes in the contract. Looking at the previously sent correspondence, which has been few and far between from the animal control, I think we've asked for quarterly updates or whatever, but it's the response to picking up dogs and cats. You can see there's a minimal amount of retrievals. Some of them are given up by people who can't take care of their animals anymore. But I think the goal and objective is to run a Humane Society, be part of the efforts from all the Quad Cities, giving money to the animal control in order to maintain and preserve the health and safety of animals. This is done in communities throughout, the state of Minnesota, in counties and cities all over the place. So I don't have any problem with the contract itself. It's not just about responding to animal complaints or enforcement. It's about caring for the animals that they're abandoned or in need of care. So does anybody have any comments or questions about the contract itself? Councilor Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor. Sherry, what is the current contract with them?
It's $40,000 for 2020.
Then goes up, I just thought,
It's on page 3.
thank you. It goes up to 42.5 for next year, for 22, and then, okay. So are we, other than having a humane society, are we getting what we need from them when it comes to collecting animals? I know I've been on ride-alongs where we have, on a Saturday, we pick up an animal and put it in the back of the vehicle and bring it down to the shelter and put it in a outdoor thing. So my one concern, and I don't know if this is fixable, and I don't think it has to do with the contract, is that the animal control officer is Monday through Friday, 8 to 4, or 8 to 5. And what happened, then our police department, if they have time, because lost animals are not a priority, unfortunately, on the nights and weekends. I don't believe they have a call-out number that I remember, unless anybody knows differently. I guess I would rather see us, if this contract is for the animal control as opposed to supporting the Humane Society in general. I guess I just have those questions in general about exactly what we're supporting and making sure that we're clear about that. If anybody has any clarification, I'd appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Johnson. And it's not just about, although it says the animal control contract, that might not be the proper term, maybe probably Humane Society, contractual, whatever the case may be. But there used to be a call-out number during the weekends. It's been a while. I've used it. And they sent an animal control officer, it took the control officer a while to get there. But the resident who called me had secured the animal. And I called the animal control officer, they came out and picked it up. Or if they were not available, this particular individual was willing to haul the animal down and put it in the cage outside there. So there is a call-out number. How they respond to that, I don't know. And I don't know if that still exists today, but we should probably check on that to Councillor Johnson's point. Yes.
On page 2, item 11,
Yes.
it has the emergency situation phone number. It's a cell number.
Very good. Thank
for
you.
the animal control officer.
On page 2?
It's there.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Johnson wants to continue.
Thank you. I think then we need to have maybe we need to have some clarification on the procedure that's followed when or if a Virginia officer needs to call that number, what happens then. Just because I don't know that, I don't know how well this is being communicated as we're training in new officers what to do, because it's one of those things you don't train on unless it comes up during. So maybe if we can just work with them and maybe get that posted downstairs in the squad room, that if there's an animal control issue, this is the protocol we follow, because it's, again, one day we happened to be riding along and we picked up a dog. It got in the back seat and we happened to find the owners halfway down the block. So it worked out very well. But at 3 o'clock in the morning on a snowy Saturday, that can be kind of a challenge. So I'm not gonna. I will be supporting the contract. I just like those couple of clarifications to help with the officers.
Thank you, Councillor Johnson. Councillor Baraboo.
Yeah, I have a little concern about the increases that are going on here. It's about 6% increases. That's way more than the cost of living, and I want to make sure the other communities are involved with this, because they have evidently have separate contracts, correct, Brett? Yeah, and I'll make sure they're paying an equal share of the percentage of increase, but to me, that's in excess of, it's 11% over the 2-year increase. The first year they're going 21, the same as it's been now, but then it's going up 6% after that. Well, 5 point something and 5 point something, 5.8 and then 5.5. So I have a little concern that that's excessive increase. That's my concern.
Okay, thank you, Counselor Bearable. Counselor Freely.
I agree. I mean, that, by my math, that's a 6.25% increase, which is a significant increase on any salary from year to year. And I know that we're not able to afford that in larger pools of employees, but I think it's a little excessive, to be honest with you. And that's no offense to the services that were being provided. It's just that that's, in all the contract negotiations I've been involved with, that's a significant increase over the course of a 2-year contract.
Thank you. So from my perspective, this is a proposed contract from the Humane Society. So we can make adjustments or ask our city staff to go back with a counter with respect to whether it stays the same for the next 3 years or whatever case may be. This is a contract that they proposed to us. We can make adjustments based upon that moving forward. And so we'll go from there. But before we go to Sherry, our city clerk, our city finance director and HR director, Councilor Bearable, do you have another comment?
Just a comment that I figured the percentage is probably different. Gary probably used a lower number and I used a high number. So when you figure either way, and that's, you can figure percentages either way. So mine's a little lower than Gary's. But if you take the lower number and then divide it, you got a little higher percentage. So it falls somewhere in between.
Okay, thank you. Sherry, our finance director, HR, do you have a comment?
Yes, I do, Mayor, Council. On page 3, the same section we're talking about, Section 5 on compensation, under governmental accounting standards, I'd like that wordage changed. Payments are due the first of each month. We need to be invoiced by them in order for us to pay. We can't just make payments.
That's fine, we can,
Thank you, and then take
Internal.
off that 10% fee. I mean, this is an allocation.
yeah, that's something you would do internally as far as requiring payments of invoice, right? Does that require council action? But just pointing that out, that that's a policy
If we make
change.
changes, that's one thing we would like to change.
Sure, absolutely, and I think that's appropriate to do so. Councilor Paulson?
Thank you. That's exactly what I was going to just address. So do we pay them monthly, or is it one annual sum?
We've been paying them monthly, Counselor, but it's, the wordage is back in there again.
And I would strike that 10% for that late fee, and then maybe have you guys, renegotiate or counter that. And then the proper procedure that you would like to see, Sherry, would be an invoice to the city so that that can be tracked as we pay the payment. Okay, and I would agree with that.
Yeah, and I think that's one change that we need to make through our city staff and maybe our city attorney moving forward. In addition to that, so we're talking about the wording, a change that we're looking like we're going to be asking staff to go back and make an adjustment to the wording of the contract. But maybe we could focus a little bit on what the compensation is as well. Councilor Johnson.
Mayor, I was just going to suggest that we direct city staff to invite them in and maybe have a conversation at the administrative level with their administration and adjust those things and figure out a more amicable increase escalator if needed at all. And I would make that a motion and just for further discussion.
Okay, Councilor Johnson is making a motion to direct city staff to meet with the Humane Society Board with respect to the contract to make the appropriate changes and recommendations and bring them back to the city council. Is that correct? Is there support?
I'll support that.
Support by Councilor Freelieb. Is there any further discussion? Councilor Beyondich, do you have anything you'd like to add?
I do, thank you.
Okay.
I appreciate and know all the hard work that they do at the local level for the animals. I've used them myself, although when I call, I always take the animal home with me because I don't want it being left outside. So I would gladly step in and help in any way that I can, but I do know that they work so hard with the animal population in a place for people to bring their animals if they're not able to take care of them, and they can facilitate with a new owner. So I would gladly work on this with the staff if they would like, and get to where everybody is comfortable. But I think the shelter is very needed in our community. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Beyondich. Okay, Councilor Bearable.
Yeah, the reason I'm asking to take a look at the dollars in this contract, we just approved going forward with only a 2% levy increase. So this is in excess of the levy increase that we've decided to move forward with. It's not finalized. We can't go up any more than 2%, but we can go down. So that's one of the reasons I'm questioning that.
Yeah, and thank you, Councilor Bearable. I think we've had conversation with the Humane Society Board, and with all due respect, asked them to come early with their proposal before, during budget negotiations back in August. They didn't do that for whatever reason, and now they're coming at this late time with a contract for renewal. And I think that's something that we have to reiterate to them. If that's going to be the case, you have to be part of this budgetary process moving forward. So it's been moved by Councilor Johnson, it's supported by Councilor Freely, to direct staff to meet with the Humane Society Board and to determine any adjustments or changes to the language of the contract, and or a recommendation and a discussion about some sort of reasonable compensation as we perceive it. So is there any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
The next item on the agenda was just a request that I had received from a business owner regarding the potential for the city to reduce liquor license fees in 2021 due to the fact that they had a burden in 2020 with COVID. I, of course, didn't promise anything and told them I'd bring it to the council to discuss, so I'm bringing it forward to today, that if there is a decision to be made, if we decide we want to reduce the 2021.
Okay, in anticipation for this, I did have some conversation with the Minnesota Mayors Association. In fact, the email came from another mayor, an outlying mayor, asking about liquor licenses and what you're doing, and looking at the various responses throughout the state of Minnesota. There are many cities, in fact, the majority, if not all of them, but the majority of them are making some kind of adjustment to the liquor licenses, whether they're giving them credit for this year or a rebate for this year or credit for next year, or making adjustments to their liquor licenses, for the exception of the municipal liquor licenses, where these cities have municipal liquor stores that they operate. But these for the private liquor establishments. And the liquor licenses with respect to the, the off sale, the bars. And so, just as an FYI, there's a various innovative ways that they're making these adjustments. So, from my perspective, it's been tough on all businesses. I mean, even those businesses who aren't licensed, like the private business who do not have any way of recovering any loss associated with the services that they're providing. And with the closure of all these businesses, and there's applications at the state and federal level to try to recover some money associated with that. I think the bar owners the liquor license holders had that same option to do so. But just to give that information, that other cities are making some type of adjustment in a variety of ways to help reduce the cost of liquor licenses or making adjustments moving forward. So that being said, we'll go to the council. Councilor Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor. Pam, can you help with how this process works? Is there any standards or guidelines set by the states for the fees, and how have we in the past set these local liquor license fees?
Councilor Johnson, as far as I know, these rates have been in place for the last 5 years, could be longer, and they're set by the council. The only one the state administers is the 2 a.m., so they set that rate. But it's up to the city to determine what the fees would be for the liquor licenses.
Thank you, that's very helpful. I think that some sort of discount for the year, because it doesn't look like this is going to be changing anytime soon. And if there, I don't know what this looks like for the budget, or if we rely on any of these fees, what that would look like, or how moving forward that would be. I just want to find some balance here between businesses staying open and helping them understand that we at the council level do understand it's been tough, as the mayor has said. Sherry, do you?
I do not know exactly the dollar figure, but yes, it is considered in our revenue. But again, if you don't have a business, a bird in hand is better than none.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you, Sherry. We'll just move around the horn. Counselor Bearable, and then on to Counselor Paulson. Counselor Bearable.
I'm going to be a naysayer in this. I do not believe we should reduce the liquor license fees. We have costs involved with our staff to do all this processing, send out information ahead of time to all the establishments. Reason being, I think it's tied in a fee schedule to our ordinance. If I'm correct on that, Pam, am I correct on that? It's tied into our ordinance, so wouldn't we have to do an adjustment to our ordinance to eliminate those fees, or is it separate?
I think what I'd like to do, if it were okay, Councilor Bearable, is refer to a city attorney for an opinion. We have a ordinance in place where we set the liquor license fees. If we want to make an adjustment to the fees, if the council decides to do so, does that require an amended change to the ordinance, or can we just do that as a one-time consideration and leave the current ordinance in place? Brian Lindsay, our city attorney. Brian, welcome.
Thank you, Mayor. And I'll make just a couple of comments. First, I'll answer the direct question. The fee schedules typically are incorporated through ordinance. There are certain situations where you can amend those fees by resolution, but those situations typically relate to planning and zoning type issues. I believe that in this case, we would need to tinker with the ordinances. The other item that I'll mention is, as Councilor Baraboo indicated, typically the rule of thumb is that when we set a permit or a license fee, those fees are supposed to have some connection to the actual dollar amounts that it costs the city to, in the case of a liquor license, investigate and do the background work to get the license processed and getting it up to the state. And so what I've been seeing in a lot of different areas, as the mayor has indicated, is that there's some arrangements that are being made. Some are adjusting the license fees, and others are creating what's essentially a grant program through their EDAs, which would have the same effect without tinkering with the ordinances, and it gets some dollars right into the hands of these establishment owners. And so as we look at this, I think the ordinance creates some concern, and we've got other mechanisms available that can accomplish the same goal without setting the precedent that we're going to adjust those license fees. That being said, there are legal ways to accomplish the goal. If the council's desire is to adjust those license fees, we can make it happen.
Thank you, Brian, very much for that clarification. Councilor Baraboo, does that answer your question? Thank you. Councilor Paulson?
Thank you, Mayor. And I think that's kind of where I was going to go in terms of with VITA, if there would be any funding available. So I really appreciate that clarification. The question that I have for Britt is, what was the actual request of some of the owners, or what were they thinking would be reasonable?
They didn't give a dollar amount, they just said a reduction.
Reduction. And right now, are we operating at, according to the governor's emergency decree order, are they operating still at 50% capacity?
Yes.
So would it be reasonable to work on that same percentage of their capacity to actually serve their patrons?
Yeah, and I think if I may, there's some formula that the state uses, and I don't have it with me, about 50% is not really 50%, because 50% capacity according to the fire marshal, but then you have to social distance when you have that 50% capacity. So when you social distance, you really don't have 50% of the capacity. You have actually less than that.
And I'm amenable to working something out. I don't know what, Sherry, I think maybe it would be great to have maybe some of those revenue the figures in to see what we're looking at. But I would also wonder if that could go under our COVID, I guess, the CARES money that we have, that we would need to get in by November, if it went through the EDA and not like a rebate from the city or changing of the ordinance, could then that be facilitated as a legitimate COVID expense?
Absolutely. We can use it as an economic development tool under their COVID expenses.
So that would not affect or impact our budget going forward? Okay. So I would be amenable to moving forward, to letting city staff maybe come back with our attorney with some sort of a recommendation.
Yeah, very good. Thank you, Britt. Thank you, Counselor Paulson. Brian, thank you. We have some options if we want to consider moving forward, directing staff to work on that. But let's continue the conversation. Counselor Bearable?
Yeah, if we were to be able to do that in a grant process off of the COVID, I would have no objection, because that would leave my issue with the ordinance aside and dissipate that. The revenue is quite extensive if you really take a look at it. We have approximately 17 on-sale licenses at $1,500 a piece. That's $25,000. And if you cut it even in half, you're dropping it to about $13,500 of revenue that comes in. So if we can use the COVID money, figure out a way to do it. I don't care.
So I think maybe the council action today is to direct staff to take a look at some potential revenue streams or process on how we can facilitate some kind of an adjustment to the liquor license as requested by not just one bar license holder, but many some others as well, and come back to the council with some recommendations of what can be done, how much of rebate there would be, and if it could come from VITA or through COVID money, or how that's distributed in a legal manner. Councilor Johnson.
Mayor, I would, did you make a motion, Councilor Paulson? I would also ask that, just because we're looking at all of the, maybe we should look at all of the fees. For example, the massage license, there was 6 months of nothing. So maybe we can just come back with create that opportunity for whatever applicable. So I'd make a motion to direct staff to look at the license fees and the possible COVID granting process, and bring it back as soon as possible so that we can help folks do their budgets for next year as well.
Yeah, thank you, Councilor Johnson. Councilor Johnson makes that motion. Is there support?
I'll support.
Support by Councilor Paulson. Is there any further discussion? First, Pam, did you get that motion?
Yes, they did.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Councilor Beyondich, did you have anything you'd like to add?
No, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Bearable?
Yeah, I would like to also, it doesn't have to be in a motion form. Sherry, bring back the total revenues if you can of those licenses, or have Pam do that, because she knows. And also, we need to do this probably going to get done by the end of the month council meeting, because they'll need time to, if we're going to use COVID money, to get it in, because we have to have that in by the 12th of November, correct? Okay.
Thank you, Councilor Bearable. Councilor Barnzelli.
Thank you, Mayor. Britt, when have they had an increase? The liquors, did they have to pay more annually lately? I don't remember when they ever had an increase.
Been a while.
No. A long while. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councilor Bearable. Councilor Barnzelli. So it's been moved and supported. Is there any further discussion? Councilor Freely.
Just real quickly, like, I thought I read from the Rams newsletter that there's going to be like a $4 to $6 billion deficit potentially in the state of Minnesota.
There is.
The upcoming biennium.
That's the
Which is
projection.
going to dramatically impact every community in the state of Minnesota. And so I understand the burden that all businesses are under, as are all citizens are under. I'm just wondering, when we provide these kinds of opportunities to ease that burden on businesses, in what fashion will we be able to do that with regard to individual residents, let alone the fees and costs that are incurred by a city? Are other agencies going to be willing to do the same for us as we're being willing to do for businesses? That's one of my concerns, is that we're all in this together and we're all being burdened by this together. And certainly we don't want to see businesses go out of business, but I guess I would ask what kinds of remedies they're looking at internally to unburden themselves. And I don't know if that has to do with profit margins and or what other things they're doing to minimize the impact they're having on their businesses to assist their ongoing business activities. So anyhow, I'm just, I'm concerned about like that we're going to be willing to lessen the burden on others that may in fact increase the burden on us in making decisions with regard to what kind of services we'll be able to provide as a city when those revenues are being reduced from the fees that we receive annually for our budget, just for sake of conversation. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that's important to look at that from the broader perspective, but the adjustments made in this particular case will be made on not coming out of our budget, it'll be coming out of COVID money, which is grant money that we received, number one, so that's going to have a significant burden. But to beg the larger question, as you brought up, Councilor Freely, is that what's going to happen with the budget deficit? Well, our biggest thing is we're going to be later on down the budget, or in the agenda here, we're going to be talking about legislative priorities for 2021. And the biggest burden that's going to be placed on the city of Virginia, the biggest risk that we're going to have, and we have a bigger risk than any other city in northeast Minnesota, is the risk to our LGA. So that's a big important. So to answer your question, that's going to be some of the issues we have to deal with moving forward. But I think in this particular case, we're not adversely affecting our budget. It's a one-time expenditure, and it's not going to affect our 2020 budget in this category. But from a broader perspective, I think that's something we need to really talk about. So is there any further discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Motion carries. Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is review the recommendation from SEH for our sewer televising for our 2021 street improvement project. And we do have Matt Reed from SEH here to discuss.
Good morning, Matt. Matt Reed from SEH. Do you own the televising mechanisms? Do we have a televising mechanism within the city? We don't?
Not to do this kind of work, no.
Okay, please continue. Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning. In your packet, I put together a memo, and attached to that memo was a quote from Rapid Rooter to do some televising and also some jetting and cleaning of some sanitary sewer lines. So one of the things we like to try and do when we're doing a project, especially of this magnitude, is get an idea of what we're looking at. So on some of these lines are fairly old, and we want to make sure exactly what we're going to be reconstructing. So by televising the lines, it'll help us understand what's in there. We can find service locations. We can find if there's any, some that there might be blank services that nobody's even using. And what happens is we get out in the field and we find those and we're not sure, then we got to stop construction, do some testing, try to figure out if it's working. Anyway, if we can do some of that stuff ahead of time, it saves time when the guys get out in the field and start doing the work. In addition to that, down on Southern Drive, there's some pretty large sanitary sewer mains down there. That's your main lines coming from town going to your wastewater plant. And they're I don't remember what Bill said, probably 20 years old, but they're in really good shape still. So likely, from what we're seeing, at least what we can tell looking in the manholes, is we can probably forego reconstructing those at this time, and they will probably last at least the lifetime of what Southern Drive will for another 20 years or whatever before you might have to do it. And that's a significant cost to the city if we have to reconstruct those sanitary sewer mains. So we want to make sure that they are in fact in good condition before we decide that. We don't want to reconstruct the road and then find out that we got to dig it up in a couple of years to fix a sewer. So the televising reports will provide us with that. There is a fair amount of sediment built up in those big lines down there, which is fairly common. And so when talking with Bill Hannes, he recommended that we have them clean those, as long as we're probably going to end up saving way more than what this is going to cost on redoing the pipes. at least if they're going to be in there, we want to get a good look at them, let's have them clean them first. I think that's a really good idea. So the quote that's in front of you, I did mention in my memo that we did try to get a couple quotes. The contractors this time of year are just really busy. So trying to finish up all the work. So this is the one we got, and they're a good company. Rapid Rooter will do a good job. And their prices were within line for what the industry standard is. So I can answer any other questions or discuss it if you'd like further, but my recommendation would be that we move ahead and do this work.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Johnson?
Thank you, Mayor. Just to be clear, when we say televised, we're not putting this on public access for people to see. Televised means we're going through with a little machine that records what we're looking at. So, because when I first read it, I'm like, why would we put this?
If you really want it on TV, we could, but
You
it's.
know, it could be a whole new reality series, Virginia Sewers. The one question I have is this 72-inch storm sewer, is this the really old one that we have? I remember having a discussion a while back that there's a very old one, that large sewer that we have that might need some attention. Is this what that conversation was referring to, and this would allow us to know what we can do to either keep it from a disaster or knowing we need to fix it?
So there's two of them, actually. There's two big, older storm sewer lines also along Southern Drive. They're actually off on the, let's see, it would be the east. One's on the, about in the east shoulder, and the other one's out off even farther yet. And so what we're gonna do is we're gonna televise the one that's closest to the road. And again, for that reason, to make sure that there's not some kind of repair that has to be done. What it's made out of old tile, clay tile pipe. And if you get into that stuff and start breaking it, you're gonna chase it a long ways because it's so brittle because of the age. And so what we were hoping to be able to do is, if it's in good condition, we can leave it alone. We won't mess with it now. In the future, there's other technologies that are out there and available now where you don't have to dig. You can actually structurally run a liner through a pipe like that. And it's got some structural integrity, as well as it'll seal it all up and make it like a brand new pipe. So that would be a standalone project in and of itself down the road, but that's the hope, that everything's in good condition and we don't have to mess with it. So that'll be part of this, just the one line though, not both of them.
So the $60,000, this is actually preventative maintenance as
A lot of
opposed
it is,
to
yes.
deferred maintenance, which we've done for years. So
A bunch of, probably half of it would be preventative maintenance, yes.
I am all on board with that. Thank you very much.
So it begs the question, where's the money coming from? $60,000? We're good? All right, Councillor Paulson?
Thank you. I think that was part of my question. So, Matt, this is, this work that's going to be done is part of the street and alley process, and then will any of those fees be assessed? Like, will that 60,000 be split up over that assessment, or so it's just a cost of the project?
Yeah, that would be up to how you guys decide what costs you want to roll into the overall project costs at the end of the day.
And that's not necessarily how it's going to work.
Normally in the past, Julianne, when we've done televising, we have not charged residents for that. We figured out another way, because this is important when we do the construction on these streets, to know where all the chutes are and off and the sewers and everything. And it saves us money in the long run to do this, because you're not digging around and busting up stuff as you dig through there, because you know where this stuff is, and it'll all be put on a mapping system. So the contractor will know where they have to be careful when they hit a house or a business or whatever it may be. So does that answer your question?
Absolutely. I'm all for this. I think it's extremely important. And, you know, part of the problem with our whole STEAM system is because that deferred maintenance occurred. So, I mean, so we have money in a fund to be able to accommodate this, but realistically, it's maintenance that needs to happen regardless. And then when they do the televising, is that also the time that it will be cleaned?
Yes, on those pipes that need to be cleaned, they'll clean them first.
Okay.
And then they'll televise them, then we'll get a real good look at what's in there.
Perfect. Thanks, Matt.
Thank you, Councillor Paulson. Councillor Freely?
I don't know, I'm just always amazed by the cost of things, and obviously the cleaning is more expensive than the camera itself, but even just mobilization to me means put the camera in the van, bring it to the site. We're spending $60,000, $400, $6,500 just to have it come. I know it's expensive equipment, I'm assuming, but I guess, you know, if it's the only quote and it's the only company that we have, but I'm just always amazed by, I mean, I don't know how labor intensive it is to be in a van, you know, sending your camera down. You know, I'm just shocked by the costs of things. I know it's cost money to invest in equipment, but the actual labor intensity, you know, that I question that. I mean, and I'd like to talk to these guys about what that all involves, but I don't know. If it's going to save us in the long run, I understand that, but it's still a significant cost. And of course, that question is where have we budgeted for this, and can we afford doing this? And more importantly, can we not afford it, I guess, is the reality when it comes down to it. But in any event, I always struggle with these things when I don't know the specifics in terms of why it costs $11,000 for cleaning a 30-inch pipe, 2,200 linear feet. You know, I can understand that being more labor-intensive potentially than just streaming that thing down the pipe. But in any event, I think it potentially will save us in the long run, and I'm trusting your advisement on that, Matt. Thank you.
And this is just part of the steps moving forward with the actual construction of the street improvement project as a whole, and to recognize the needs for the infrastructure improvements for the long term. Councillor Baraboo, and then on to Councillor Johnson.
Yeah, man, Matt, this is just for the first project, first step. We'll have another one of the same similar for the second years, the 2 years down the road too. So just to let you know ahead of time, it does save money. I can tell you this from being street and alley chair for many years in the past. If you bust a line going into somebody's house and it travels down the line, we're going to be responsible for that, not the resident. So we end up with costs off to a resident or a business that we wouldn't need to if we know where those things are exactly. Because they'll mark them, they'll paint the street or the sidewalk where those things go into the businesses or the homes. They'll have actually visible things where they are, correct, Matt?
Yeah, they'll show up on the plans, and then usually the city crews are the ones that mark that, but yes.
These mobilization fees are like when you buy a new car. All of a sudden, the transportation costs are excessive, but the dealer prep fees are almost triple. So you figure, how does it cost that much to dealer prep? So mobilization costs are like a added cost coming in maybe to, I'm not saying they're padding it, but it's, you know, it's an expensive part of the process. And I agree with Councillor Freely, but it's hard to fathom that expense. Councillor Johnson.
Thank you. I have two questions. One, so can I get a picture of my sewer for a small fee? I mean,
You can have it.
sorry.
Are you in the project area?
No, I'm not. I'm on 8th Street, so I'm pretty sure. My other question is that this is a $60,000 investment. What is the feasibility of the sewer department buying their own camera to be able to do this on a somewhat on a maintenance scheduled basis? Have we ever looked into that to see the cost? I guess that would be something to do in the future. Not for this project, but for the future, something to think about as a way of Brits.
Honestly, I would encourage everybody to when they start televising to watch them. It's not just to the camera, it's a van. It's a massively large camera system that shoots out this hose. I've unfortunately had this company at my house for the same reason, so I know what they do.
And I would ask, Matt, that when this gets scheduled, I would like to come. If you could
It's
send
very
me an
interesting,
email,
and
I'd
it's
be very interested in.
very icky.
That's a good word. So that's my question, you know, if it's, you know, if they've got $1 million worth of equipment, then it makes sense why it costs $60,000.
It's very, very large equipment in a van. Unfortunately, unfortunately, when Boabic, when I was working in Aurora, we had a contract with Boabic to do water and sewer services, and we had a massive freeze up that year. If you recall that winter, that all the lines were freezing. And this company was the one we had to call to find out where the thawing were. And it's a massive van, very large equipment, not just the normal camera that we do have at Public Works. We do have a small,
We do have one,
a
okay.
very small camera, nothing like this.
Okay.
This is quite large and
That helps a lot too. I appreciate that explanation. So I would move that we approve the expense out of the sewer fund.
I'll support that.
Moved by Counselor Johnson, supported by Counselor Bearable to approve. Item number 4 on the agenda is the recommendation for the sewer televising for the 2021 street improvement project for this fund to come out of the sewer fund. Is there any further discussion? Counselor Bornzelli.
Thank you, Mayor. Matt, the sewer pipes go on the boulevards, the east side and the west, going down to the plant? Or does it go down the middle of that,
Actually, all three of them are under the road,
the
believe it
center
or
of
not. Pretty much right, a couple down the drive lanes, one down the middle. They're pretty big. They're 36, 30, and 24-inch diameter pipes.
Well, what's over on the east side end in that property that?
Storm sewer.
Oh, that's that.
That's the 6-foot diameter. Those are big. Those are the 5 and 6 foot diameter storm sewer pipes.
Didn't you have a problem with that years ago?
Not sure, maybe,
For your time? Thank you.
probably, yep.
Okay, it's been moved and supported. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Motion carries. After item 5, maybe we just take a 5-minute break. Okay, item 5 on the agenda, thank you. I just saw Brian walk out the door. I just saw Brian come walking back in the door.
Thank you.
Item 5 on the agenda, Britt.
Item 5, if I can defer to Brian Silver, our Park and Recreation Director, it's the purchase of bleachers for the youth ball fields.
Thank you. Well, good morning once again, Mr. Silber. Welcome again to the council meeting.
Good morning. Thank you for having me this morning. At 2 weeks ago at the Committee of the Whole meeting, it was suggested that we evaluate looking at adding bleachers around our ball fields as part of our CARES Act funding. In your packet, you will see a quote, the lowest quote that we did receive for the bleachers. We are looking at purchasing 6 additional bleachers. This would allow us to add 2 bleachers at Lenari, 2 bleachers at Beyondich, and 2 bleachers at the new field that we're putting into service down at Southside.
Thank you. Councilor Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor. This quote is only for 4. That is in our packet. It's only for 4
Oh, it's for
bleachers.
4, okay. So that would be adding, we would be taking the 2 out of the current minors to put at one of the places, because we will be getting new bleachers for the new mech.
Okay, if it was going to be 6, I wanted to make sure we
No,
approved
this
the
is
rest.
for 4.
And then now that you've been here this will be your second winter here in the Great
Yes.
Northern Tundra, what are we doing for winter storage to help prolong the life of these bleachers, or are we doing anything?
These bleachers stay outside year-round.
Okay, they're aluminum?
Yes.
Okay, all right, thank you.
In addition, these bleachers, the new bleachers that we are purchasing are what they call the preferred bleachers. The bleachers that we currently have in our system, you have 1 rail to sit on and 1 rail for your feet. My personal preference is the preferred bleachers, which gives you the 1 rail to sit on and 2 rails for your feet, which makes these bleachers a little bit wider. It also makes it a little bit easier to maneuver once you are in the bleacher system. So people, if you're sitting in the middle of the bleacher, you can actually get up and squeeze by other people a little bit easier.
Thank you, Brian. Mr. Silber, Councilor Paulson first, and then Councilor Freely.
Thank you. I just really wanted to say thanks for checking into this.
Yes.
Because I think it's something that we need, and if it's covered under the CARES funding, it's great that you looked into it. So I appreciate it, and I'll be supporting it going forward to do.
Thank you. Councilor Freely.
And I know you're an incredibly thorough guy, Brian, but I've seen bleachers tipped up and unused in the back rink. Like, have you inventoried adequately all of the existing bleachers we have that could be
Yeah, we would be
utilized?
taking some of those bleachers from the back rink out to the baseball fields. That's why our quote is only for 4 of them. And then the new bleachers that we will be getting as part of the FF&E for the new building would be in the Arena B.
Perfect, thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Freely. Councilor Beyondich, any questions for our Park and Rec Director regarding the bleacher purchase?
No, Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Looking for council action? Councilor Paulson.
I'll move to approve the purchase of the 4 bleachers in the amount of $12,599.96, which will be covered by our CARES grant funding.
Support.
Moved by Councilor Paulson and supported by Councilor Johnson to approve the purchase of the bleachers for the softball fields through CARES Act funding. Is there any further discussion? Councilor Beyondich?
No, thank you. I'm ready.
Okay, thank you very much. No further discussion. Pam, did you get that motion?
Yes, I did, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Hearing no other discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. I think she said she was ready, so I think that's an aye. Motion carries. Thank you.
Yes, I did. I voted with everybody else. I'm sorry, it's aye.
Nope, we got you now. Thank you, Councilor Beyondich. Okay,
Thank you.
anything else to add, Mr. Silber?
Not at this point.
Very good.
I
Thank
believe
you.
I'm number 6 also.
Okay, well, did you want to do number 6 real quick, and then we'll take a quick break? It's been a while. Brian, item number 6, Britt?
That's the approval of hiring the figure skating program coaches.
I will move the hiring the figure skating coaches.
Moved by Councilor Johnson to approve the hiring of the part-time figure skating temporary employees for the figure skating program. Is there support?
All support for discussion.
Okay, we'll take a little support from Councilor Beyondich. Is there any further discussion?
Just one question.
Councilor Bearable.
Yeah, just one question, Brian. The fees and stuff for the coaches, are they staying the same or are they increasing this year?
Everything is staying the same this year as of last year.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councilor Bearable. Moved and supported. Is there any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Let's take a quick break. And 5 minutes, come back here at 10:20, please. Okay, we're back online. We just took a short break for those who are listening at home. We are now moving on to the next item agenda. I would ask that if this is item 7, which is under personnel, it's the city administrator employee evaluation performance. It could be closed. Could we forego this to the end?
Correct, that'd be wonderful.
Would that be appropriate to do so? Would that is agreeable to everyone?
We do have staff in the audience, so it'd be great if we can.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. Let's move on to item 8 then, Britt.
Item number 8 is review the policy for lighting requests for the cupola at City Hall. And this is for our new lighting system that we have. We have not got a request in yet, but we're trying to be proactive, that if we get requests from the general public or from a group or an agency, that we have a policy in place when they have a request, if we want to put the cupola green and black for Rock Ridge, or if we want to put it whatever color maybe.
Well, yeah, thank you, Britt. I'm fine with any policy that you bring forward. I reviewed the policy. I've already had 4 or 5 requests, and I'm referring them. I said, when a policy gets developed, which will be soon, we'll make that a possibility. So I'm glad to see this on the agenda. Councilor Johnson.
Mayor, and I just have to give a little shout out to Chris. I know she did some diligence and she researched the state's policy with the I-35 bridge in the cities, and so I think it's a great policy. I would suggest that at the end of the annuals, the default color will be white. It's not just a pure white. It's because it changes from a warm white to a cool white. So with that change and for further discussion, I'll make a motion that we approve it as presented with white as the default color.
I'll support that motion.
Moved by Councilor Johnson and supported by Councilor Bearable to approve the policy of lighting requests for the cupola at City Hall with that one amended change. Did you get that motion, Pam? Pam, are you on the line? Would you check, Britt? Thank you. Before we move any further on the agenda. Pam, are you on the line?
Pam, can you hear us now?
Yes, I can.
Thank you, Pam. Did you get that motion that was made regarding the approval of the policy for the cupola at City Hall with one amended change?
No, I did not. I
Okay.
didn't hear any of that conversation.
Okay, thank you. Then we'll repeat the motion. Councilor Johnson.
I will move to approve the cupola policy with the default color being white.
Councilor Johnson moves to approve the lighting request for the cupola City Hall with the default color amended change to be white
And I supported that as Councilor Bearable.
and supported by Councilor Bearable. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda is a draft license agreement between the Virginia Fire Department and RGGS. This is for access to the causeway, I believe, Chief Lewis? Yes.
Yes, I had a request to get down to the causeway system with respect to some news reporter from some other country that was, or from somewhere that was coming down, and so I referred them, Britt referred me to the fire department, and there was some kind of an access agreement with RGGS in order to get access down. There's liability things in that regard, and the fire department was able to accommodate that news team or to get partially down there. So this is that agreement that we always get with RGGS for many other things. Chief Lewis is here. Is this agreement amenable and addresses the needs that you have and satisfies the requirements of RGGS? Chief Lewis, good morning.
Good morning, Council. Thank you, Mayor. Yes, this agreement came out of the need for access for emergency services for a number of reasons. There's a lot of concern from RGGS from a liability standpoint, and so they put forward an agreement. We had our city attorney review that, and I think any other, the questions, from the fire department side, it meets our needs and goals, and I think the legal has been addressed through our city attorney, but unless he has any other questions on it, this is what we need.
Okay, Brian, anything else to add?
Mayor, I have reviewed it and no legal concerns from my.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Lindsay. Councilor Johnson?
Thank you, Mayor. Is this just for the fire department, or is it for all emergency services, including the police department?
I believe the agreement is with the city of Virginia. Is that correct, Britt?
Okay, so everybody would have access in an emergency. I just want to make sure that that's not one of those technicalities. Okay, thank you.
We want to point out that we will have to buy an additional insurance policy, like we do with every other agreement we have with RGGS, because the league only goes to a certain dollar amount. And so the league has reviewed this. They said it's a very common agreement with RGGS, and just to remember that we have to buy that additional policy.
Britt, will that need to be a part of this motion then?
No, we'll get that quote from our insurance agent.
It'll be separate. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Looking for a motion.
I will move the agreement with RGGS and the city of Virginia for access to the bridge.
Councilor Johnson moves to approve the draft license agreement between the Virginia Fire Department, actually it's the City of Virginia, and RGGS, and it's supported by Councilor Barnzelli. Is there any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. So a point of order of request, item 10 is we may go into closed session. So if we go into closed session, can we address both the personnel and the real estate negotiations in one closed session, or do they need to be separate? Brian?
Mayor, we could address everything in one closed session if we make record of it before we close.
Very good. Thank you very much. So can we forego item 10 and then move to item 11?
Yes. Item number 11 is a report from the MEC design team on the logo for the Miners Entertainment and Convention Center.
Okay, thank you. Again, our Park and Rec Director, Brian Silber, and the design team. Brian?
Here the other week, we had a design team meeting where we discussed several things, one being our logo. What came out of that meeting was going with a simplified logo, which you will see in your packet. There is still discussion on having a little more fancy of a logo, a little more logo with some other items in it. But this would be a logo that we are looking for approval for at this point that would get us started with our marketing of the MEC.
Yeah, and this is just the logo that the design team is proffering for today is not necessarily the logo that may be in the future. This is just the logo, a project logo at this particular time until additional conversations and negotiations go on about maybe naming rights. Is that correct?
That is correct. So this is temporary just so that we can have a attractive logo to start our marketing of the facility.
Thank you, Brian.
I do have a comment.
Yes, Councilor Beyondich.
Thank you. At our last meeting that we had, another proposal has been brought forward since that, and I didn't get the idea that we were pressed as far as the logo, more so the wording. So I would like to postpone this for now until the design team can come to an agreement on what the logo should look like.
Okay, thank you. I guess I was looking at, first, to address Councilor Beyondich's question, and second, I know that the marketing director is looking to put this logo into place, so until we get the marketing thing on board, I know there's been a lot of inquiries about that. We need to send out that information, so whatever logo the design team is proffering forward is I think it's, I don't know if the word critical is right, but we need to expedite this as quickly as possible moving forward. So in answer to Councilor Beyondich's question, could you address that, Brian, please?
Yes, the most important aspect from a marketing standpoint is being able to move forward with the name, which we were all able to relatively agree on. The logo is not as important, but it is a key aspect. It'll make the marketing have a bigger splash if we have a logo, even if it is just a temporary logo.
Is this a recommendation that came about, that's in our packet now, from the design team?
From the design team, but since that point, one of our design team members has brought forth 2 other logo suggestions.
Okay, thank you. And as the remaining, as the rest of the design team had an opportunity to take a look at those last-minute presentations by that one member?
I do not know if as a combined body, no. And I do not know if every member of the design team has gotten to see all of the logo suggestions from our one member.
Okay, so Councilor Beyondich is asking that if this could be delayed for a short period of time until you can present these other logos to the rest of the design team. We think that's her question. I'm looking for the recommendation, though, moving forward. Before we do, I'll go back to Councilor Beyondich. Any further information or questions before we move on to other councilors? Councilor Beyondich?
Yes, thank you. If I recall at that meeting, we talked just about what we were calling it, that the logo was No Hurry. Even if it's a temporary logo, I was told that we didn't need that. What we needed was the name. So I would like to put more time into looking into other options before we jump into one that we may end up changing. Let's get it right the first time. And I came away from that meeting that we had come out with the name that they could use on the letterhead, and the logo could go on hold. There was no hurry for the logo. So I don't want to rush into something on this big of a project and not explore what avenues we have open.
Okay, thank you. Let's move on to the rest of the councilors. Looks like that has generated a lot of conversation. So we'll just go from left to right. Councilor Baraboo first.
Yeah, that's not what we were told when the individual company that got the bid for this particular project. They need to get the logo as quickly as possible, and that came from them because they need to market with logo. We can always change the logo in the end. I disagree 100% that we should sit on this because every month means by the time this opens next fall, we're going to be behind every month, another month, where they can't get out the information that they need to with the logo. So I'm dead set against that. You can always finalize the logo and change it right at the last minute when you put out the final brochures and stuff on the events that are going to happen.
Okay, thank you, Councilor Baraboo. Councilor Paulson.
Thank you, Mayor. So when we actually met as a design team, the consensus that day from the Lindeen Group is that they just needed the wording to begin with, and that we were kind of given some direction from Eric Wedge from DSGW regarding some possibilities and the changes, and those are the changes that you see in your packet. But I would also agree that one of the other design team committee members put together 2 different designs, basically, and he was here, so I'm sad that he's gone because I would love to have had him be a part of the conversation. So from where I guess what I want to ask, and I know what the Lindeen Group, what we all kind of hashed out there, but even if we get somebody to do the naming rights, is that logo necessarily going to change with the name? So for instance, the design team member had an outline of the state of Minnesota, incorporated some timber, and the way I look at it, so I had driven by not only Giants Ridge over the last weekend, we went up on the chairlift, and their mountain peaks have specific color, the sunshine has a color, and then if you look on the outside of the Fortune Bay Casino, kind of a round, colorful, and then it has Fortune Bay across it. There's a different sunsets. It kind of incorporates a Native American theme plus an up north theme. And even with that, the Minnesota state cut out, the star where Virginia was, like I could almost envision that as being made in an iron ore metal to be put on the outside of that building. So without getting into all the specifics, but what I'm saying is that the logo really will define the building if that's going to be placed on the outside of the building. And so in terms of what that might have looked like from that one design team member that wasn't able to yet be developed, if we get someone with naming rights, the background can still be the same. I guess, Counselor Johnson, is it possible for you to pull up, or who has the computer? I'm so sorry to even ask this. Maybe just so you guys can get a visual? Am I asking too much?
Well, while he's doing that, while he's pulling this up, I think what the design team is asking, and you being part of the design team, is they wanted a temporary logo to be set out when they market it. And the logo, based on our trip around to the other centers, the logo was a contributing factor to the individual organization who wanted paid the significant amount of money for the naming rights. The logo was an important factor as to putting their name on that. So they would probably want some input into a logo. So I think the ask was, and this is your design team thing, whatever the design team recommends, I'm with that, because that's, I have trust and faith in the design team, so you come together as a unit and decide what you want. But that was an important factor. So that was, when they were marketing their events, they had a blanket logo, a project logo, which eventually changed when the naming rights occurred and the logo was redefined based upon the individual who purchased the naming rights. So FYI on that.
And I get that, and I think that was
sure.
pretty much widely discussed at our meeting. Britt and Brian were both there. And I feel like the design team did not come to a complete consensus on an actual logo, but what was really important to the Lundin Group is just the words. And if you look at like the deck, the Duluth Entertainment and Convention Center, it's just the deck. I mean, it's just a font and it says deck. There's no actual logo. So I think the Lundin Group walked away from that meeting with the anticipation that we would have another conversation and that we would agree to a logo, but now it seems like we did not come to a consensus. So in just, oh, you can't pull it up. That's okay. Maybe each one of you can pull it up individually and just so you can understand what I'm saying, because now I kind of understand a little bit better what you're saying, that if the naming right group, committee, or place, entity, they're going to want that, also that logo. So it's not just a name, they want to be, is that consistent with what the Isaac Sports Group places that you guys toured?
And towards the end of our meeting, at our design meeting, we had given the Isaac Sports Group, or given the Lundin Group the direction that not only go with the MEC name, and we chose the font, but we also told them to go with this M, making a couple of modifications to that M. And that's what they've done and presented to us.
So what I would like, maybe moving forward, I'm sorry, please continue, Councilor Paulson.
No, I fully agree with that, and yes, that was the ask of the design team to ask that. And then after that, we received the other submissions, and there didn't seem to be a complete consensus. So I think that's where I'm at with it. I understand it's a temporary and it will probably be changed, but I also want to be sensitive to those on the design team that have been part of the process since the beginning. And maybe we do need to have another conversation to kind of hammer it out a little bit and to discuss, even out of the ones that are in before us, we didn't really have a chance to come to a consensus for selection. So I'm not trying to belabor this, but I just feel like the design team really didn't come to a consensus. They came to a consensus with giving the Lundin Group direction, but now going forward in the choice, we haven't done that yet.
Do you think, Counselor Paulson and Brian, those members of the design team could maybe meet again and come up with a consensus to present to us before the next council meeting on Tuesday? Would that be something that could be done?
I
Believe
think
we
so.
probably could arrange another meeting with our design group.
Okay, just a suggestion as we're going through discussion. Counselor Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor. This was during the week, I think I was on vacation, but the preliminary logo was sent out ahead of time, correct? Before the meeting, the one with all the little extras that was sent out before you met and decided on these 9 options.
Yes, 2 weeks ago at the Committee of the Whole, we had a couple different logos. At our design meeting, we had many more logo options that we hashed out pros and cons of each of those logo options. And what you have before you today is something that was not even presented to the design team at that meeting, but what, after looking at all the different options, combination and add and take away of what we liked and didn't like with several of the logos that were presented.
So I'm just trying to get the time frame. So committee meeting, some logos, then a design team meeting with lots of logos, and now this meeting with 9 logos. And so that's the time frame.
Yes.
Okay. So my first concern is that what if somebody comes tomorrow with another set of logos? How long are we going to keep logoing until we say, no, that's enough? I mean, if I understand the point is to get something out there so people can go, hey, look at that. Now, I like the M with the V in it. I think there can be a lot done with this. This is the base. This is where we start, and everything else happens afterwards, whether it's, maybe for the arena, it's skates and hockey sticks, and for the business side, it's computers and chairs or something, but we have a base, and I think that's where I'm at. The Miners Event and Convention Center was a name that was chosen when we started this project 2 years ago, well before you came, Brian. And that we had that discussion, I think Councillor Friedlieb, we had that discussion many times, both here and all those meetings. So not being happy with the name at this point is kind of late to the game. I think that unless somebody presents a lot of money to change it, I feel comfortable that honors the past, and it also defines the future event and convention center. So I think that's a non-starter point. I don't think we should be discussing that. That's my opinion. But I think we need to move forward with a basic logo for that. It can always be changed. There's nothing holding us to it. I'm just not comfortable with, after 2 meetings, having some more options presented because, again, what's to stop somebody from presenting more? My other thought, and this is probably late to the game too, is what we've done with the city. Once we get everything up and going, maybe we present an option for people to create the design with our parameters, and that person we award a contract to because they presented a design. There are a lot of very small businesses that do very good work when it comes to logos. The Forest Lake, there's a hotel in, or Range Regional Airport, there's a hotel in Grand Rapids. These are all businesses that have had someone locally design it. I think we should move forward with one of these logos, the M with the V. Whatever looks good in black and white is my opinion at this point, because we're not hopefully going to be, everything's not going to go out in color, but, and I think we need to set a deadline that we have this done by a certain date. Otherwise, this discussion will drag on longer than it has already. That's my 4.5 cents.
Thank you, Councillor Johnson. I didn't think this was going to be this much of a conversation about a logo, a temporary one at best, but this is what we're here for. Counselor Bearable.
I think I've had my first chance, Counselor Freely, let him go ahead, Gary, because I had one chance already.
Okay, Counselor Freely.
I've always considered the importance of the KISS philosophy, which to me is keep it super simple. And I really liked the pickaxe incorporated into the initial one that you provided to us. In fact, because for the past 60 years, the Miners Memorial Building has served this community and the Park and Rec Department very adequately. And so that's why we were keeping that. The economic engine of this community and this region is mining, in fact. And yeah, there are things that you can do to make things look nicer and prettier and incorporate other things, but the Miners Event and Convention Center is the Miners Event and Convention Center on the theme of the memorial that was provided to the miners of this area. So, I mean, so I'd like to keep it simple to, and I'm actually very hopeful. I don't know what the talks are, but I'd love to see Cleveland Cliffs, MEC, whatever. So, you know, because that seems appropriate for the area. So, and I agree with Charlie and Steve, and with no disrespect to Councilor Beyondich, that we need to move on this, because that was the whole intent and purpose of this project, was to create a facility that's going to be where they will come. And the sooner we can get out there inviting them to come, the better off we will be in terms of how we'll utilize this facility. And I do like the idea of incorporating the V that kind of highlights the city in which the Miners is located. So I think we need to move forward as quickly as possible. And like I talked before, there can be evolutions to, you know, evolving of different types of logos that may be appropriate for the building. At some point, you do establish one that's going to be on the building. I understand that. But for these purposes, right now, I think it's essential for us to move forward with something that we can then advertise and market this facility and move forward with filling that facility, which is what we need to do. So thank you for my time.
Thank you. One quick comment from me. Whatever the design team decides with the logo, because you have a cross-section of people in the community, that's what the design team is for. You make that decision. You may not all agree, but whatever the recommendation of the whole or the majority comes forward, I'm going to approve that. So because that's what you're there for, to do that. So first, before we go to the rest of the council,
Counselor Beyondich.
Counselor Beyondich, one more comment from you once again.
Thank you. Is Brian available? I have a question.
Yes, he's at the podium right now. Go ahead and ask your question, Counselor Beyondich.
Okay. Brian and Britt, you were both at that meeting. Did we not come to the conclusion that the wording was what they were going forward with, and the logo we could work on? Was that not stated?
My understanding of what we had decided at the meeting is moving forward with the logo and the font that is presented, or moving forward with the name and the font that is presented today. And then we had told them to go with the M, incorporate the V outlined, and remove the pickaxe, and utilize the colors that are also in the city's logo for the MEC logo, which is what they have presented us with today for approval.
Okay, my second question is, how many people and who are on the design team?
The design team is yourself, Councilor Paulson, Greg Gilness, Mike Mohar, myself, and our city administrator, Britt C. Bennis. And Eric Wedge.
Okay, so as I talked to Greg Gilness, he had no idea about the logo and felt very left out in this whole process. And that's my issue, is we're not being inclusive. The timelines of when things are done are one thing, and they were done, but when you don't include or get input from your team and that's what we are as a team, that's where I feel we've let it slip. We do need to meet again before we move forward with any type of a logo and come to a consensus. That's how I feel about it. I would just as soon table this until we were all done meeting with the entire design team. The name, all of that we decided on and said that was fine to move forward with. But we're not even looking at another aspect from the design team.
Okay, well, there was,
I
Go
do
ahead.
have an issue with that. I think we do need to meet before we go forward with any type of the logo.
okay,
Thank you.
okay, thank you, Counselor Beyondich. I do want to hear from the members that were, we have heard from members from the design team that were there. I assume Mr. Gilness was at that meeting, is that correct?
Yes, our full design team was at the meeting.
Everybody was at the meeting?
Yes.
Everybody was there to discuss the same issue?
Yes. Now, we did not have 100% consensus.
Well, I don't think you're ever going to get 100%, but thank you. I think I wanted to clarify that from Councilor Beyondich's concerns and statements in that regard. Councilor Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor. That was going to be my question if everybody was present. And this agenda packet was put out last Friday, so we have all had equal time to look through the presented logos and to voice those concerns. Did you get any concerns prior to this morning about the logo from any of the design team members?
After our design team meeting, a much more elaborate design was presented to me, which we forwarded on to all the design team members. And then this morning, I was presented with a second design option.
So I guess where I'm at is, I think I'm comfortable approving, and are we supposed, a question before I say that, are we supposed to choose one of the 9, or are these just all variations that could be used as, because of the color changes? Because as far as I can tell, everything's the same on this page of all 9, except how the color is spread or whether or not it's outlined in a lighter color. Is that relatively accurate?
That's relatively accurate, yes.
So where I'm at, and this is my opinion, I'm not going to make a motion yet, I think we go with the V with the M imposed on it that is best suited for moving forward. And then if we need to create a fancier logo for letterhead, for whatever it is, then we do that. But I think we need to move forward with this. I feel, from what I've heard here today, all the design team members have viewed what we're seeing here, there's been a lengthy discussion. It's just that 1 or 2 may not agree. And in a design team of, did I count 7 or 8 of you?
Yes.
1 dissenting voice is okay. We have that here regularly. But that doesn't mean that the other people have to change their opinion. There can be some more discussion, but I think we need to move forward with the M with the superimposed V. And if it's a matter of choosing one, I would then direct the design team to pick one of the 9 for the temporary let's move forward logo for the Lundin Group, and then there can be further discussion after that. And it's not a motion at this time. I want to make sure everybody has an opportunity to voice opinion.
Thank you, Councilor Johnson. Councilor Paulson.
Thank you, Mayor. So the
We'll
design
get you
team,
next. You next, Councilor Bearable. Sorry.
the council received this, just for chronological order's sake here. The council received this in their packet. I don't know if this got emailed to the design team. I think it did.
Yes.
It did it? Okay, so everybody then has had the opportunity to see it. The design team has not had the opportunity to meet again and come to a consensus. So I think that would be the first step. The second thing that I'd like to ask is, what is the legal entity name that we placed on our sales tax?
Miners Event and Convention Center.
Okay, so if you look at all 9, it says Miners Event and Conference Center on all 9 of them.
Should be convention.
So that's my point. We need to have a little bit more discussion because that's on all 9 of them. Which that's not the legal name. Am I correct on that? So I think we need to have that meeting.
Okay.
Because we walked out of that meeting with the wording. Now, if that's the wording, that's not the legal name, so I'm concerned about that.
At this point, my recommendation would be for us to reconvene the
Thank you.
design team this week so that we have something to present at next week's city council meeting. Keeping in mind, it may not be 100% consensus on the design team, but at least we can have a majority vote from the design team that is brought forward to the city council.
Okay.
I will make that a formal motion if need be.
I will support for discussion.
A motion made by Counselor Paulson to direct the staff and the design team to meet once again and come up with a recommended logo to be presented for approval at the next city council meeting, approved by Counselor Johnson. Further discussion, let's go to Counselor Bearboux. I'm sorry, I didn't see your light on there.
Oh, no, that's all right, Mayor, because I had given my time to Counselor Friedlib beforehand. We're all missing the whole point of this. We're going through the minutia of what the logo looks like right now. This could change 100 times before it's over with, depending on the naming rights that somebody want to buy in for $1 million or $2 million or whatever they might want to do. The important thing is that if you're going out for business for this convention center, all these places, League of Minnesota Cities, Greater Minnesota Cities, all these things, schedule. There are things at least a year in advance to 6 months in advance to find places.
2 years in advance.
We need to get, in 2 years, we need to get this stuff out there so we can start filling that convention center. I don't care what the design looks like personally, to begin with. Get it out there, get the Lundin Group having something on their letterheaders to get it, because that's the important thing. This other stuff we can all finalize later.
Yes.
You see, take a look at the hockey arenas out in Dakotas, in Bemidji, and all those places. Naming rights came afterwards because somebody wanted to buy them. So that's my point. It can all be changed. The legal name, I agree. The legal name, I agree with you. We need to use that in some of the stuff, but for what we did. But that's my. I don't care if we wait, but we got to make a decision next Tuesday. I'll go along with that, but it's got to be made next Tuesday.
Okay.
So next Tuesday, our design team will have a consensus to present at the council meeting.
Thank you. It's been moved and supported to do so, to have a meeting with the design team to come up with a recommendation of a logo for us to vote upon at the city council meeting next Tuesday. And that was a motion made by Councilor Paulson and supported by Councilor Johnson. So if there's any further discussion, Councilor Beyondich, you have any further discussion?
I do. Thank you. And I do realize why we're going through with this, but I want to make it perfectly clear that when something comes up on a team, and it may not go the way everybody wants it to, and I don't have a problem with that, but I think we need to let it go through the due process before we make a decision. And as a team, whatever we come up with, that is fine. So I just want to make that clear. Thank you.
Okay, well, the design team met. You continue to meet. All members were present. All members had the opportunity to discuss. You have different perspectives apparently on what was discussed there. You're going to clarify that at your next design team meeting, and you'll have all those recommendations, the name change for what we want to where it was before. I don't think there's a legal name, but that was a name that's readily recognized as the Miners Event and Convention Center. And then we'll also look at the recommendation from the design team with respect to the logo so we can get moving on our path to marketing this this event center. So is there any further discussion on this matter? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you,
Thank you.
Brian. Thank you.
The next item on the agenda is item number 12, review and discuss legislative priorities for 2021. And in your packet, I did put the 2020 priorities, so for reference, for us to begin
Thank you.
discussion.
I think, I think we need to have this done. Give us a couple weeks in which to get those accomplished. I know that the legal, I think the Laurentian Chamber is looking at for some legislative priorities, which is fine. It's a community-wide event. The Laurentian Chamber involves more than just the city of Virginia. Well, our legislative priorities, I think, take precedent over that. Moving forward, I think we can come in with a collaborative. Just know that next year's legislative session does not include a bonding bill. This is only a legislative session to act upon bills that were not acted upon during this process. And one of them is the sales tax exemption for building materials for not only the MEC, but for the public safety building moving forward. So one of our legislative priorities, I think, needs to be, and I will look for some consensus from the council, is to make sure that we lobby for not only our lobbying group that we approve, but also our legislators, which are also acutely aware of the need to make sure that we have that bill. The bill is there, it just wasn't considered. And we're not the only one that's asking for the sales tax exemption on infrastructure, so we're not the lone wolf here. And so I think that has to be one legislative priority. And the second, a second legislative priority needs the protection of our local government aid. Because of the significant deficit that we're going to be facing, the first thing that the legislature looks for is how to save costs. And not save costs in their governmental entities and cutting their Department of Transportation or Homeland Security or anything like that. It's to cut the aid that they give to cities. And there's a lot of lobbying groups down in the metro area who do not receive local government aid. So as you know, and this is a matter of public record, we received over $5.9 million in local government aid. If that's in jeopardy next year, we have to make sure that we secure those same funds. And what compounds this so much more important for the city of Virginia than elsewhere, two things. We get more money in LGA than any other city because we're the largest city, for the exception of Hibbing in northeast Minnesota, and because of where we're at, our geographic location and how that local government aid formula is stated, that's one. The other is because of the state of Minnesota and this highway funding, the gap in the funding, $5.4 million, which we tried to get, couldn't get out of bonding because the money was already spent. The Constitution of Minnesota says we can't get that. But it could have come out of transportation funding. It didn't. Could have come out of another pot of money. It didn't. The state, the legislative representatives, and our local representatives moved that $5.4 million to where? The local government aid account. So not only are we suspect for $5.9 million or more in regular local government aid, there's a one-time stipend of $5.4 million that's in the local government account as well. So that could be in jeopardy. So I think those two items for sure need to be a part of our legislative priority list. So thank you. I open this up for additional information and moving forward. Councilor Bearable.
I think it's imperative that we look also at putting forth to our legislative bodies that we don't get any more of these unfunded mandates. That's really important because that costs the city over the years I've been on this council tons and tons of money. Some of these other things we've had listed from 2020, I don't care so much about, but those are three of the major things I believe, what the mayor has said and the other. Now, the legislation was passed, I believe, wasn't it, Mayor, on the 5.4? That wasn't predicated on the fact to cut it back. So I don't think the legislature can cut that back. It was already passed.
It's in the law, but because it's in law and it's the $5.4 million may be allocated, it's because of the $5.4 million being like it may jeopardize our $5.9 million of regular government aid.
Well, I think that opens it up for a big lawsuit against the state personally, but because you can't retro back dollars that have already been taken away, and take it a second time away. That's crazy. But you may be right, Mayor. I don't know the total legality of that, but I think that needs to be taken a look at. But those three things are what I would go with too.
And I think for the councilor to consider as well is one other thing. And I think that we have to find a mechanism, some kind of a strategy moving forward, how we address issues that are being pressured upon us by the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency. We have to find a way legislatively to look at whatever we need to do. There's now 50 acres of land that we have to consider now moving forward, and there's a lot of things the MPCA is coming up with. Our wastewater treatment plant, which was a $19.2 million project, now all of a sudden we don't meet a standard that never existed before we built the thing. I mean, I think they're out of control. I understand the premise of the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency, but I think they're out of control. We need to do something about that. So we need to sit down as a group and use our expertise and talk about what we can do to try to mitigate some of these costs associated with some of the unfunded mandates, as you expressed, Councilor Bearable, moving forward. So that's another issue we have to start taking a look at as well, and strategize a method of which to address that with our representatives too. So, Councilor Johnson.
Didn't realize I'd be first. So I look at this two ways. One is that what we're looking at is, do we continue to pay Jarek, our lobbying firm, to work for the city to lobby? That's where I'm at for my bottom line. And then my other thing is, does the city of Virginia have very specific something to be lobbying for? Last year, we had the Public Safety Center. The year before, it was the Public Safety Center. That we've gotten, I think, as much as we're going to get out of the legislature for now. Before that, it was miners' money. So my question is what is the city-specific thing that Ron Jarek and Associates will be lobbying for, as opposed to all of these general things that the league, this says, the League of Minnesota Cities, a coalition of greater Minnesota cities, a range association of municipalities. I'm sure the Minnesota group of counties and the group of townships and all those other folks are also doing this. So I want to know, how will we measure success and results from the $36,000 we're paying our lobbyist moving forward this year?
Well, did we approve their contract for one more year? Is that correct? Okay, so we have one more year to look at the priorities. So if we have some,
But that is a month-to-month contract.
that is just a one-year contract. That is correct.
But it's month to month. We can cancel it with a month's notice if there's no reason for them to be lobbying to us. Is that not correct?
Yeah. So are you recommending that right now, Councilor Johnson?
No,
Or-
Mayor, I am
Okay.
asking questions about why we need them and how are we going to measure their $36,000 of taxpayer investment in that company. That's what I'm asking. I'm not suggesting anything else.
Okay, thank you. Do you have any specific legislative priorities you think that the city might be taking a look at this point in time?
That is why I asked the question, because I don't see anything specific to the city of Virginia.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Well, there in your packet, there's a list of legislative priorities that we had for last year. Regardless of who we have, whether we have a lobbyist or do not have a lobbyist, I think we still have to use our government authority or government as elected body to try to push for some of these things. I mean, this tax thing, sales tax thing is, that's important that we be able to do that. So whatever mechanism we use to accomplish that is the mechanism that we use. But I think, in answer to your question, Councilor Johnson, looking at priorities, I think that sales tax is important specifically to the city of Virginia, as far as allaying taxes for building materials for the public safety building, and then retroactive to the Miners Memorial Building, which is important for us to try to lobby for that too. So who lobbies for us or how we lobby for us, I think is just something we'll obviously make a decision on as a consensus of the whole. But we have to have some legislative priorities for 2021. And I think still, I mean, there may be any new things that come out of here, and we're not talking about bonding. We're talking about budget stuff from the state of Minnesota. Even though maybe we've got more than people say we deserve, or maybe we're not going to get anything more out of the legislator, but we have to continue to try to continue to improve the economic engine of our city and find a way in which to find more funding. So this is the time for us to discuss that. We're not going to make a decision today on the legislative priorities, but we're here to discuss what they could be. So if anybody has any questions or concerns or comments, or they hear from their constituents about what they want to see moving forward, we should be able to do that and bring that forward as a consensus of what we need to moving forward. So I think it's important for us to continue to find ways and look for legislative priorities, not just for the sake of having them, but for specific reasons. And I think we have some reasons that we can, and a recommendation from staff in which to do so, and individual councilors who hear from their constituents are also important. Councilor Paulson.
Thank you, Mayor. So on this list from 2020 legislative priorities, is this a working document that can be changed and added?
Yes,
or
absolutely.
So, like, say, for instance, if the federal, well, whoever, I guess, will get elected, but say an infrastructure package would come forward from the federal government and we hadn't listed city street funding as a priority, could we then add that as an additional?
Yes.
Okay, so this is it's a living document throughout the
Yes.
year that we can focus on.
It is.
Okay, thanks for that.
Sure. And I know you bring up a good point about, what was it just before you mentioned something about this infrastructure and the street projects. So when the legislature meets, our local legislators can do justice for us. It's trying to find every conceivable opportunity to bring our issues forward. So whatever those issues are, that's what we do. And I think it's important for us to continue to be visible at the legislature, whether it's through the League of Minnesota Cities or the Greater Minnesota Coalition of Greater Minnesota Cities, or it's individuals going down and speaking to each individual legislators. And I can tell you that it's important for us to have these legislative priorities, and regardless of what we do. And, I caution, there's contacts you make down at the legislature that are more of a, when they're not in a legislative session, moving forward, attending different events that they have and those kind of things. I've been to a lot of them, both on both sides of the aisle. So by maintaining the communication, both from individual councils, going through his meetings, going to the Greater Minnesota City, League of Minnesota Cities, hearing what other priorities are from other cities, it gives us an idea of how we want to moving forward. But I think we should have some legislative priorities, and we should move forward with those, and depending upon how it goes, that's how it goes. So, give it some thought, and let's give our city administrator, Britt, some information, talk to our constituents, find out if there's something that's moving forward. And then if we have some priorities, we can make decisions on whether or not we get representation from one party or another, or what we do. But I think that's important for us to have a way in which to continue to have our thumb on the pulse of what's going on at the legislature and keep Virginia prudent, and keep them a matter that Virginia really matters about what our needs are legislatively. Council Freely.
One thing that just came to mind, knowing that my wife, who retired after 40 years, is now at home babysitting our new grandchild. And then I met another grandfather in the parking lot this morning who was waiting to pick up his two grandchildren from his son who teaches at the school. And I think we need to start thinking in terms of affordable and accessible childcare for this community. Not that grandparents shouldn't be involved in the raising and helping of a grandchild, but there are a lot of young couples in this community that simply do not have access or are able to afford the child care that is available. So I think from a legislative priority standpoint, that might be something we need to consider for this community.
Thank you. We can make that on the list as well. One other factor that may come before I go to Councilor Johnson, if that's okay. Councilor Johnson. Okay, thank you. The IRRB has been our friend. They've provided us opportunities, and I think it's important for us to continue to use them as a resource. But sometimes things change constructively and organizationally, and it appears as though there may be a change in the commissioner's spot soon, or in a short period of time. And so whoever the commissioner of the IEEE is going to be is going to have an impact on our request and how we move forward with that. So that's something to think about in the back of your mind as well. Councilor Johnson.
I appreciate you bringing that up, Councilor Friedley. There's a lot of single parents with the same issue. Maybe, you just, grandparents are great, but they can only do so much. I would agree with that. Brett, would it be appropriate to ask at the next department head meeting, to have all of the department heads brainstorm on where they think we should be focused as well? Let's listen to them and bring back that list. And nothing's off the table. I think we need to start being really creative, but that would also give the seven of us an idea of what our staff think we need, that maybe it's not a legislative priority, but it is something that maybe we need to be prioritizing within the city. It might help you be able to, I know you know these folks backwards and forwards, but maybe it's time, no budget constraints. If you could have a new public works garage, or if you could, if we could build a water park, what kind of things do they want to see, and how does that fit into what we prioritize both at the legislative level and here in this room at the city level? That would be my request of you and the staff.
Thank you, Councilor Johnson. So we have a base to work out of. So we look forward to continuing the discussion moving forward. And because we have our department head here, the fire chief, EMS coordinator, emergency management director, we would, we're going to meet with you as well in your department, and Britt will meet with you and determine if there's some legislative priorities in that regard. So let's continue to do so. So let's go. Item 10B, is that something that needs to be in closed session as well?
Item 10B, yes.
Okay, so before,
However, item 7, realize, can only be closed by the employee.
right, so,
Employee is choosing not to close the meeting.
okay, so thank you. So let's move back to item 7, and I'll take this one as the meeting deal. And so we have item 7, which is the city administrator employee performance evaluation. This portion of the meeting may be closed at the employee's request pursuant to the Minnesota statute 130.05 and 113D.05 subdivision 3. Our city administrator, Britt C. Bennis, has chosen to keep the meeting open. And so you take a look in your packet. We have the performance evaluations that are being passed out right now by our HR director, Sherry Erickson. This continues to remain a public meeting. And as these are moving forward, I look for this council for their review and comments about the performance evaluation of our city administrator.
Brett, would it be okay if I took a picture and sent one to Maya?
Everybody,
Thank you.
so you have a copy, and before we move forward with it, Councilor Johnson will be sending a picture of this to Councilor Beyondich for her participation in the evaluation process. As you recall, everyone received a document prior to this and an individual evaluation regarding the performance of our city administrator, Britt C. Bennis. After these forms were completed and returned to our HR director, Sherry Erickson, she compiled the final numbers and the averages, as you can see, under the following categories of the value of people, communications, delivery of results and challenges in the processes, leadership behavior, and acting in the best interest of the city. So as you're continuing to review this for the public's input, under value of people, it's, what was measured is the showing of respect, seeking input, recognizing good actions, keeping focused on fixing the problems, treating people fairly, and protect confidentiality. That's undervaluing of people. Under communications, it was listening in effectively, encourage others, take the time to understand others' perspectives, open to negative feedback, gives enough information, gives open and honest feedback, effectively deals with conflict, involves me in the decision-making process, sets a clear direction for our department, and communicates openly and honestly. That's about communication piece. Then the delivery of results and challenges in the process, makes appropriate decisions, acts after making a decision, takes the initiative to get things done, thinks outside the box, pursues better ways to get things done, helps others manage through change, and supports the decisions of others. That is the delivery of results and challenging in the process. And then examples for leadership behavior, acknowledges mistakes and learns from them. Actions and behaviors are consistent with words, is trustworthy, deals with the issues that need to be addressed, provides a clear sense of purpose and direction, roles and responsibilities. That's under leadership behavior. And acts in the best interest of the city, which is visible with positive presence, is highly ethical and professional, and gets involved in making things better in and for the city of Virginia. That's under acts of in the best interest of the city. And there's an average overall score that was that's here, and some of the recommendations as follows: what to continue to do, start or stop, and make work more enjoyable. So I'm looking for questions, comments, or concerns from the City Council respect to this performance evaluation. Councilor Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor. I find it extremely interesting that the people she supervises score her very high and the people that supervise her not quite as much. As someone who's been on both sides of this, usually it's the other way around. So I think that this demonstrates from the people you manage that they respect you and that they really understand that you have their best interest. So I appreciate that, and I would say for the council average, which seems a little bit lower, I'm going to make more of an effort to talk to the people you're supervising to see what they're seeing that maybe we're not. So I'm still very happy you're with us. I think your leadership that quantitatively demonstrates here that we are doing the right thing as a city, and I will do what I can to support you moving forward with this evaluation.
Thank you. Nobody else has their light on, so I'll just make one quick comment. I mean, we've been working together for a long time as a group. We always come to a consensus. We have our disagreements. We sometimes our emotions sometimes elevate a little bit, but we're all together as a council working together for a common goal. Britt, you as a city administrator, you do the same thing for all your employees. You're the conduit not only from the city council, from the top down, from the bottom up, and you're squeezed into the middle. And I've seen, and I've worked for city administrators in the past, both in the metro area and locally. And I must say that that you have always maintained a professional decorum. You give your very best 100%. You're available at all times through the weekends, the holidays, whatever the case may be. Whenever I have a question or a comment, I'm reluctant to send you the information or ask you for some information, but I feel necessary because you're the one that can give me that answer, and you always respond. So I think that as an administrator, you're doing outstanding work for us. And so I do believe that we want to stay on the course that we're at right now. We want to continue to move forward. We have exhibited through your leadership the ability to hire highly qualified people for our positions. There's no nepotism. There's no, quid pro quo. This is an open and honest process moving forward. And I think the results indicate from the department head levels all the way down to the local levels of employment all the way down the line, from union all the way to MAPE to everyone. I think we all think that the job that you're doing is you have extremely good leadership qualities moving forward, and you keep us informed. And I want, the last thing is, it's difficult, I know, to deal with all the different personalities, not only of the people you supervise, but for all of us sitting up here today. You have to manage our different personalities and our little inequities and all those kind of things in our little quirks, and you manage to maintain your professional decorum, and that's why I admire you the most about that. So I think you should continue to move forward. There's some things in the performance evaluation that some people look at. I don't see it, but I mean, we all see things differently. So overall, I think this is an outstanding evaluation, and I just ask you to continue to maintain that professional decorum as you move forward and for the challenges that the city faces ahead today. So those are my comments. Anybody else have anything they'd like to say? Councilor Barnselli.
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor, I echo your presentation for Britt. I think we are really fortunate that we got her. And I think she makes this place run. You know, from garbage collection, cutting trees, fixing streets. I think you're great. Thank you.
Councilor Freely?
Yeah, I think it's indicative that, there is great respect for you, for your personnel, and that those are the people that work with you every single day, day in and day out, and that demonstrates your value to them as a leader. I am not able to work with you every single day, so there were a lot of things that I felt like I wasn't able to observe. I don't know if that skewed the results to some degree, but you obviously were above the council average in each of these categories. So at anything I've had to deal with you, you've acted professionally. You're exceedingly organized, and I really appreciate the leadership that you demonstrate in the position that you hold.
Thank you. Councilor Baraboo.
Yeah, I've known Britt a lot longer than most of you here in this room.
That's because you're older than us.
That's true. I've just been around longer. That's all. But Britt originally came here and was an employee of the city, and she's progressed to get all her degrees and everything else to become an administrative head, and she's done an outstanding job as far as I'm concerned with everything she does with the employees. There are a couple areas that I would like to see her devoid herself of, because she gets overwhelmed with certain areas. One of them is the area that we're looking at right now, and that's with new business and that type of stuff, where if we get a planner in place, that will drop her workload where she can concentrate more on some of the other areas that she may need to do a little bit more. Because I know she goes, I've talked to her and called her after hours. She answers her phone, her cell phone, whatever, just because I've thought of something that needs to be looked at, and she always follows through. So, Britt, I'm very pleased with your performance in this city, and I give you very high marks.
Thank you, Councilor Baraboo. Councilor Beyondich, did you have anything you'd like to add to the conversation?
I'm good, thanks.
Okay, sure. Councilor Paulson.
Thank you, Mayor. I would agree with and echo the sentiments that, Britt, you do, and you got a lot of balls in the air all the time, and the way that you juggle them is, I think, extremely impressive. And there's a lot of things happening in the city of Virginia. So I look forward to being able to help support you, hopefully with a city planner and different things that are coming forward, so that a little bit, of your plate would be lightened up. But I think overall, the professionalism that you've displayed, I greatly appreciate it. And I would agree, there is a lot of personalities throughout the whole city. So, I mean, that's a tough call to be an administrator. It's a tough position to be an administrator. But I really thank you for all the positive things that you brought to the city and just your willingness to jump in no matter what it is, to tackle the problem and to try to find a solution and then present that information to us. So I greatly appreciate that.
Okay, thank you. Any comments, Britt, about what our review?
Thank you. I appreciate everything, and I really do appreciate the feedback. So I actually really like doing this every year. I know at first it takes me a minute to sit. I have to sit and think, oh, what did I do wrong? But I appreciate knowing what I need to work on and how I need to change my focus. I really do appreciate everybody that did the review and gave the feedback.
And you chose to make this in a public setting, and we've all echoed our sentiments in the performance evaluation. There are some suggestions moving forward, but it has a lot to do with how much you really have on your plate here. So what we said, just carry forward, keep moving. So thank you. Anybody else have anything they'd like to add before we move on to the next two items on the agenda, which is item number 10, is to discuss the real estate negotiations regarding Essentia Health's purchase of the property, which is at 901 9th Street North, and the determination of the location of the proposed public safety building. Now, both of these can be discussed at closed session as pursuant to the recommendation of our city attorney, Brian Lindsay, that we acknowledge publicly that we are going to go into closed session to address both these issues. And once again, I'll repeat those issues: the Essentia Health purchase of property located at 901 9th Street North, and determine the location of the proposed public safety building. So I'm looking for a motion to suspend the city council public meeting, and move to closed session. Moved by Councilor Freely. Is there support? Support by Councilor Barnzelli. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Yep, let me know when you're ready.
Pam and Maya, I'll call you both.
Go ahead.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to just take 2 minutes here, and then